Hello guys and welcome to Rayl Deal Games. As promised 2 weeks ago when I released my Tarkir Dragonstorm review, I am here to talk about my Cons Cube today. So let's go ahead and just get right into it, guys. I have a lot to talk about today and I want to make sure that we're able to get through it all. So like I said in my Tarkir Dragonstorm review, Tarkir is my favorite plane. I love the story. And so when I designed this cube, the first thing I was trying to do was make a plain cube. Not like plain boring, like Tarkir the plain cube. So I cut out any card that featured Phyrexian stuff in the background. So no Zergo and Ojutai. No Invasion of Tarkir. These cards are out of here. They're not in here at all because they don't fit the vibe. Now, when I went into the core construction of the cube, what I did is I separated it into 10 archetypes and I gave 36 cards to every archetype so that you come out to a total of 360, which is the exact number you need to draft 8 people. Those 10 archetypes were Abzan, Jeskai, Mardu, Sultai, Temur, the 5 clans, Atarka, Dromoka, Kolaghan, Ojutai, Silumgar, the 5 dragon clans. Now this actually makes this very interesting because historically speaking in like Cons of Tarkir, Tarkir Dragonstorm, when you're drafting you're trying to be enemy paired and then you convert over into like a 3-color if you want to. In this, allied pair 2-color is viable because mechanics present within the dragon clan. So it's a very unique Tarkir draft environment. And I want to talk about some of my card choices here and what I went for. Now, before I do that, though, I have to talk about why I designed the cube the way I did. I really wanted this to meet the vibe of Tarkir. So let me pull up a card here real quick. That would be a good example to show. Ojutai's Breath. Ojutai's Breath is not a super powerful card. It basically just stuns a creature once and then rebounds. This is just a common, and even in Dragons of Tarkir draft, this might be a common that you would trim from your deck. So why would I put cards like this in my cube, where most of the time cubes are designed for every card to be powerful and you to be able to just play everything? The reason why I did is because I'm actually doing this as a middle ground between a cube draft and a draft. In that, when I build the packs, I stack mythics out first, rares second, uncommons third, and then commons. And that's how I build the packs. That means there's not exactly an equal number of each of those in every pack, but there is a mostly equal number of mythics, rares, uncommons, and commons per pack. And so I do want you to have these situations where you have to think, do I need to cut this out of my deck? Do I need to prioritize a fetch land or a utility land over a rare? Let me find an example here. This one. I'm just going to pick this one. A rare I might need for my deck that I could actually play. Like, do I prioritize the lands? When you have them all mixed together, that's not really how it works. And it also means that sometimes you never see the core mechanics of your archetype show up for you. And I like splitting it up this way because in your pack one, pick one, you can then see very easily, do I have a common within my archetype? Do I have a rare in my archetype? What would be the best pack one, pick one? And so it's kind of a middle ground between a draft archetype or a draft setup and a cube draft. A cube draft is usually all the cards mixed together and then you just divvy out your packs and then you draft. This is going to be a little bit different than that. Now, the first archetype I want to look at is the Abzan. And the Abzan has 2 core mechanics that went into the way I designed them. And that is, for the Abzan, green, black, white, is Outlast and Endure. Outlast is a mechanic where, we got an Outlast guy right here, if you pay the Outlast cost and tap it, you put a +1 counter on your creature, and it has to be done as a sorcery. This means that you are foregoing the ability to block with the creature to put something on it. But the Outlast creatures I put in here, they also have a passive effect where each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter does something. That's the Falconer. Let me find the other example, Battle Priest. This one gets lifelink, and so between these 3 cards, you can get lifelink, you can get flying or first strike, and then you can get I think it is flying from the Falconer. Yeah, you can get flying. So you can build a really cool +1/+1 counter themed deck, which does matter because this is the archetype that also has cards like Hardened Scales in it, which is a cool card for this particular archetype as well. Now, Endure is a new mechanic. It comes from Tarkir Dragonstorm, and I am looking for a very particular card to showcase this. It's a 5-drop green card. There it is. And what this does is when a creature endures, it has a number, usually 1 or 2. I think it is actually only 1 or 2. And you either put +1/+1 counters equal to that endure number on the creature, or you make a creature token that is that power toughness. So this guy, for instance, in Spirited Vanguard, he has a 3/2 that when he enters or attacks, he endures 2. So you can either put 2 +1/+1 counters on him or make a 2/2 creature token. Really, really cool card. Those are the 2 foundational mechanics of the Abzan, and you can see how they play together quite well, super well, and they also combo quite well with the Dromoka mechanic, but I'll talk about that one later. Now, that is the core idea of the Abzan. You get a lot of high value creatures, and then you start putting +1/+1 counters on them, and this is the 13 Abzan cards that I chose for it. We've got our Abzan Monument for fixing, and then we've got some of the core main cards that are the most iconic Abzan cards of the previous era and of Tarkir Dragonstorm Limited, in my opinion. Got cool. Part of the reason I like building cubes is you get to play lots of cool cards that are just unplayable anywhere else. Ivory Tusk Fortress, I think, is a really cool card with a gigantic elephant on it. I love elephants. And the Abzan actually makes it so that something else I love about Tarkir is how prominently elephants feature in Tarkir. They are so cool. I love elephants so much. And you can actually play elephants within Tarkir. There's a nice like green based elephant deck that you could play too. The second archetype is Jeskai, and Jeskai has 2 mechanics. It has Prowess and it has Flurry. Now Prowess shows up in, let me find my 2-drop white Seeker of the Way, where if you cast a non-creature spell, the creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and then sometimes they do other things where where non-creature spells matter. So for instance, this doesn't have Prowess, but this card, when you cast a non-creature spell, you get to pay 2. If you do, you get a 2/2 Gen Monk creature token with flying. So it's a very non-creature based focused mechanic. Flurry is an advancement of that mechanic where if you cast 2 spells in a turn, the second time you cast a spell, you get an effect. So Wingblade Disciple here, you get a 1/1 white bird creature token with flying when you cast your second spell. Taigam Master Opportunist, you get to exile the original version of the spell, make a token copy of it on the stack, and then put that original into suspend to play it later. Really, really cool card. I got him in Tarkir Dragonstorm draft one time, and I suspended like 5 cards on him and got to cast 3 of them. Really, really fun card that plays really, really well with Flurry and plays into the factor of wanting to let people play cool cards. You see, I have like 1 major goal, 2 major goals. When I made this, I wanted it to be Tarkir, themed around Tarkir, and to fit the vibes of Tarkir. But I also wanted you to be able to play loads of cool cards and also get the payoff. You see, I have a personal rule with my cubes where you are not allowed to scoop unless your opponent is okay with you scooping. And the reason why that is because I want people to actually play cool cards. And it's very annoying when you don't get to play the cool cards that you draft. And so I like to let people make their combos and start actually profiting from the combos. The third archetype is Mardu, which has 2 mechanics, Raid and Mobilize, and they work quite well together. It's awesome how they did that, how they made Tarkir Dragonstorm mechanics that complemented original concept Tarkir mechanics. I was really, really I felt that was so cool to see. Now, Raid, which I'm going to pick a raid creature. Actually, I'll go down into the Rakdos cards here. This did not come out in original Cons of Tarkir, but it is a Tarkir card, Alacia, who laughs at fate. She's a 2/2 first strike that when she attacks, you get a +1/+1 counter on it. And at the beginning of your end step, if you attack this turn, that's the raid mechanic, you get to return a creature card with mana value equal or less than Alacia's power from your graveyard to the battlefield. That's raid. So you get to attack. You're incentivized to attack, and then you get some kind of raid trigger if you play your raid card post-second main phase. At the time, this mechanic was really, really well regarded as a way of introducing players to the idea that you have a second main phase. Something that a lot of new players really overlook is the second main phase. They feel like they have to play everything, then attack, then pass turn. No, you can play things second main phase, and it creates a lot of tension within combat when you do that. It's really cool. Now, this second mechanic is Mobilize. Now, I talked about Mobilize in my review, and I specifically talked about Dalkovan Pack Beasts in that review 2 weeks ago. Mobilize has a number, and when you attack, you create that many 1/1 red warrior creature tokens. Warrior matters because there is the Chief of the Edge in here, so warrior creature tokens do get +1/+0 if you have this guy. So the warrior text does matter for these because there is light warrior synergies within Tarkir, the plane. And this works really, really well because it plays with a token theme, and it also creates fodder for cards like Butcher of the Horde. Butcher of the Horde was one of the best cards in Tarkir, original Cons of Tarkir draft, in my opinion. I mean, he wasn't the best, right? He wasn't as good as Wingmate Rock, for instance. Like, look at, if you don't remember or don't know what Wingmate Rock does, let me show you real quick. This is a 5-drop 3/4 flying with raid that if you attack this turn, you get a Nether 3/4 white bird creature token with flying on the battlefield. He has his mate with him. And then when you attack, you gain 1 life for each attacking creature. It's bonkers. It's a bonkers card that is fair in this particular draft format because there are dragons everywhere. There's dragons everywhere, and those birds get eaten by dragons. So that's why it's fair. But Butcher of the Horde was such a cool card. I really like Butcher of the Horde's design, and Mobilize allows you to get fodder to give him lifelink. You wouldn't be able to give him vigilance. Well, you could give him vigilance off of those, but you wouldn't necessarily want to because he theoretically would be tapped already. But you can give him lifelink every time. And a 5/4 flyer with lifelink is no joke. That is interesting. I also like how Mardu Siegebreaker kind of creates his own Mobilize where he will exile one of your own cards and then he will mobilize that card every time you attack. And both of these mechanics also play into Nerev as well. So for instance, Nerev is the spirit dragon of the Mardu, and if a creature you control entered this battlefield this turn would deal damage, it deals double that damage instead. That combos really well with a card like Mardu Heartpiercer. Where is he at? There he is. Where he deals 2 damage with a raid trigger, he now does 4 damage with a raid trigger, which is so cool. And so all these mechanics work really, really well together, and I like the way it really worked out in that way. Now, Sultai has 2 mechanics that you won't do all the time, but the times you do them, they're like the big swingy mechanics. And that's Delve and Renew. Delve, and I'll show you my favorite Delve card for this. Where is big old Dig Through Time? I love Dig Through Time. Delve basically means you can exile cards from your graveyard to decrease the price of the spell by 1 for every card you delve. Very powerful mechanic. Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise were banned in Modern the year they came out for a reason. They were really, really good in that format, and they were really good all the way throughout Standard. Oftentimes, Dig Through Time was either a 2-drop or a 4-drop in Standard, and in my experience. It was a really good card for that. I've got a bunch of foils of them. I love this card so much. But yeah, it's a swingy mechanic in that you are not playing these Delve cards very quickly all the time. I put a lot of the best ones like Gurmag Angler and Hooting Mandrills and murderous cut in here. But they're all like spells that are high value spells that you can get really low costed. And that's like the Sultai mechanic. And the reason why this kind of works is because Sultai is all about milling and getting the benefits of the mill. I forgot to go through my Mardu cards here, but I'll go ahead and scroll through them for you to be able to see real quick. Got 2 4-drop demons. And I want to go through the Sultai ones, though, right now. And so you've got a lot of, like, milling and thief-type effects within this. But the big card and my favorite card from Original Cons of Tarkir is Sidisi Brood Tyrant. When she ETBs, she mills 3 ETBs or attacks. Sorry, it's been a while, but she's got good. ETBs or attacks, you mill 3 cards from your library, and then when 1 or more creatures are put into your graveyard from your library, you get a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Very, very cool card in Standard. Sidisi Whip, to this date, is my favorite deck I have ever played in any format, period. It was such a good deck. And she helps you fuel delve, so you get to delve off a little bit quicker. And it's actually kind of interesting because one of the things that would happen sometimes when playing Sidisi in Original Cons of Tarkir Limited is that you would mill yourself, but it's very cool how the Dragon Omen spells, and I'm looking for an example here of a Dragon Omen. Here we go. Scavenger Regent is when you cast one of these cards for their Omen, they get shuffled back into your deck, which means you can actually prevent yourself from being milled, and you can keep playing the game. So you actually get to really pop off with Sidisi and have the ability to not accidentally kill yourself with her by milling too greedily. It's really, really cool for that. And then the other mechanic is Renew, and I'll show that with Keru Goldkeeper here. Renew is if the card is in your graveyard, you can pay the renew cost, and then it will put, either +1 counters or flying counters, lifelink counters on whatever you want to target with it. And it's basically just a upgraded or modified scavenge mechanic. This is a great one here, Karsi Revenant, where you can get a flying death touch and lifelink counter on a creature by exiling it with Renew. This is cool because it actually works with the milling theme of the Sultai, and it plays into the delve, and it actually creates this situation where you don't want to just delve everything from your graveyard. You're going to want to be really picky and choosy with what am I delving, what am I keeping there. You definitely want to keep your Renew, and you're also going to want to keep your Harmonize cards, which is the Temur mechanic. But let me go through the Sultai cards real quick before we get in there. We've got really cool stuff like Fangkeeper's Familiar, and one of my favorite Sultai cards from Tarkir Dragonstorm is Kotis the Fangkeeper. So you've got a lot of just very high value cards that work really well. In fact, the one card in Tarkir Dragonstorm that mentions Delve is Taval, Arbiter of Virtue, which gives every spell you control Delve. And he's 6/6 lifelinker. Really, really cool setup for an awesome Delve control deck. And it also plays quite well with the Silumgar mechanic, but I'll talk about that in a later moment. Let's talk about Temur, though. The red, blue, and green wedge. Temur's first mechanic is Ferocious. Ferocious says if you have a creature a power 4 or greater, you get this effect. And so for Heir of the Wilds, here is a 2/2 Death Toucher that when he attacks, it gets +1/+1 if you have Ferocious. Really cool mechanic with a lot of just high value 4 power creatures to help you trigger the Ferocious mechanic all the time. Formidable, we'll talk about Formidable at a later moment. And then the second mechanic is Harmonize. Now, Harmonize is such a cool mechanic, primarily on these blue cards here. Let me find a very good Harmonize. Here we go. Urani's Rebuff. Return target creature to his hand for 2 mana. That's not that good. But what if you Harmonize it? What if late game you bounce 2 creatures to your opponent's hand because this card basically has flashback that can be reduced? You see, what if you played a 3-drop 4/2 that turned on your Ferocious and also worked well to help you cast Harmonize. It looks like Temur's got a very good 4-power theme going to it. Well, let's look at those Temur cards real quick. Well, hold on. What about Savage Nux? Yeah, he sets up Ferocious right away with a lot of great activated abilities. And he's pretty playable in this particular cube, at least. What about Songcrafter Mage, which is a modified Snapcaster Mage that gives Harmonize to a card in the graveyard? Really cool idea for a card, I would say. And then you've got all kinds of just big, beefy guys. Big Harmonize Mammoth Bellow that creates a 5/5 green elephant creature that can be harmonized. Ah, it's such a cool wedge, isn't it? This is where the Temur actually has more cards than the other wedges because there's extra build-arounds in here. Dragonback Assault is the landfall card in the cube, which gives you a 4/4 dragon when you play a land, and he does 3 damage to every creature in Planeswalker when it lands. This card is a very, very powerful card, but it's actually pretty beatable within the context of this particular cube. And then you've also got, like, Sarkhan Unbroken, and you've also got Ureni here. Ureni is very good and fits in with the land theme. Those are the 5 clans. Now, they were... The framing of their design came from Khans of Tarkir, Fate Reforged, and Tarkir Dragonstorm. But there's another set that's in there, and that's Dragons of Tarkir, and I wanted the 5 dragon clans to also show up. So I need to find Surak Huntcaller because he is going to show off the Atarka mechanic, Formidable. Now, there's not a lot of Formidable cards in this cube because Formidable is hard to trigger, even in Limited, and a lot of the effects weren't really that cool. She's more about just having big guys. That's what she brought into this cube. Big, big dragons with big effects. But Formidable, in her particular clan, just gives you an added effect if you control creatures with total power 8 or greater on your side. Surak will give a creature haste whenever you do. He also gets you most of the way to the Formidable on his own, so he kind of produces it himself. But he just works really well with giving your big guys haste. So if you played like a Surak Huntcaller, and then you followed him with a Bloomvine Regent, you can give this Bloomvine Regent haste, which is kind of good. It's good for green to have a haste mechanic based on big beefy guys. It makes a lot of sense. The Dromoka mechanic, which I'm going to talk about with Sandstep Mastodon, is Bolster. So Bolster says that you got to pick the creature that you control with the least toughness, and you put +1/+1 counters on it. So it helps you build up your weakest guy pretty much. So Sandstep Mastodon will bolster 5. He'll pick the weakest one that you have, and he will give it 5 +1/+1 counters. That's a really, really powerful card. And I forgot to talk about go over the Atarka cards here real quick. Where are they? Gruul. Here they are. So you've got like Harbinger of the Hunt, Savage Vent Maw, Atarka, the 2 Atarkas, and Atarka's Command. And then for Dromoka, you have, for this, there's only 4 cards here, but you can see their big chins, which is cool. Big chins. And this one is very good because it triggers the Bolster mechanic, which is a cool mechanic. And this one plays +1 counters as well. So Dromoka actually plays quite well within the Abzan wedge as well. Just like Atarka plays quite well within the Temur. Formidable plays well with Ferocious and Harmonize. So it's very interesting how the Dragon clans bolster, you could say, the clan archetypes. Then we've got Kolaghan. Oh, my dear loved and beloved Kolaghan. The mechanic for Kolaghan, and I'm just going to show you these Rakdos cards for it, is Dash. Dash basically means that you could pay an alternate cost for your card, usually lower costed, but not always. Actually, no. What am I talking about? Usually higher costed, but not always. And when you play it for Dash, you're going to give that creature haste, and then you're going to return it to your hand at the end step. So you don't get to maintain board presence, but you get quick damage. And my favorite dash creature is Kolaghan the Storm's Fury. 5-drop, 4/5, dash. When a dragon you control attacks, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Freaking amazing. I've killed many, many people in Standard with this card back in the day. Comboed this with Pia Karan Nalar and Hangerback Walker. Had a lot of fun. Now I got to talk about the elephant in the room, because anyone who knows anything about Tarkir knows Dragon Lord Kolaghan does not work in a singleton cube. The reason why Dragon Lord Kolaghan doesn't work is, even though she has flying haste and gives other creatures you control haste, which is fine on its own, her other ability, whenever an opponent casts a creature or planeswalker spell with the same name as a card in their graveyard, they lose 10 life, does not work in singleton because none of these cards have the same name. However, that's why I have eroded her for this particular cube to say, if you cast a card that shares a name with a card in your graveyard, the name of the legendary card, this will trigger. So for instance, in this cube, if somebody were to cast Narset, Enlightened Exile, and they had Narset, Enlightened Master, in their graveyard, they're both Narsets. We know they're both Narsets. They're the same legendary creature. That's going to trigger Kolaghan for this cube. That's how I'm eroding it to actually make her playable within the cube and create good decision making for your opponents, like interesting decision making. And so that's why I'm going to include her, because I want to play Dragon Lord Kolaghan. I love Kolaghan. I actually triggered that in Standard once on my buddy Ryan. He played a Gideon ally of Zendikar without reading this card. Like, why would he? This is not a playable card. I had just brought him from 16 to 10, and then this trigger goes on the stack and he reads the card and dies. And that was before he and I were really good friends. And I remember this memory constantly because I knew about this guy, and I bring it up periodically when I talk about Tarkir, because I think this is funny that that's the only time I've ever triggered it. And in this cube, you can trigger it more, because it will actually come up with all these Sirocs. And if you killed, say, Atarka Worldrender, and they've got a Dragon Lord Atarka, and they know they need to kill your Dragon Lord Kolaghan, and they're at 10, well, they might cast this, take the 10, and kill your Dragon Lord Kolaghan, and still get into the game. So the trigger is going to come up in this cube for sure. Will come up. I'll talk about these artifacts later. Now, the blue... Oh, I love how Dash works with Raid, by the way. It works really well with Raid. The Ojutai mechanic is Rebound. So one of the big Rebound cards is Profound Journey, 7-drop. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Rebound. You cast Rebound at your upkeep, and it's just a good way of triggering Prowess and also triggering Flurry. So it works within the Jeskai wedge that way. And then obviously Ojutai has Ojutai cards. Ojutai's actually got one more card than the other Dragon. Oh, I guess Kolaghan had 6 as well. But because you had Taigam Ojutai Master released in a commander product, he gives every instant or sorcery card Rebound if he's attacked. So it kind of creates a very cool loop with him. He also makes it impossible to counter dragon spells when you have him out, which plays into the dragon theming of the set. And then we've also got the 2 Dragon Lords, and I've got a foil Dragon Lord Ojutai that I'm really, really excited to be able to use again. I have not been able to use that for a very, very long time. And then for Silumgar, we've got the Exploit mechanic. I gotta go to my 5-drops here because I gotta look at Sidisi, Love of My Life, Undead Vizier. 5-drop, 4/6 Death Touch with Exploit. You may sack creature with Exploit when this ETBs, as this enters, or when this enters, or something. I don't remember how the trigger works. And when you exploit, you get an effect. For Sidisi Undead Vizier, she's a tutor effect. She's actually one of 6 tutor effects in the cube, because the 5 cons fetches are in this cube. But yeah, she'll let you tutor up any card you want, and Exploit's just cool. It kind of helps you build up your delve graveyard stuff, and it works into a kind of control theming. It also, you might want to exploit a renew creature because you're not losing complete value, and then you get basically a full card out of the renew effect and whatever the exploit effect is. For instance, this one makes two zombie creature tokens, so that's a really good exploit effect at 5 mana. This one draws cards, and they all kind of like work in that theming. And one of the more interesting ones that I have is Profaner of the Dead. I actually used this 2 separate times in Dragons of Tarkir draft to kill people. This card was not super great, but it really could come up and be clutch sometimes. And in this cube, I like how you can potentially exploit an Ambling Storm Shell to bounce every creature with, is it CMC or is it power? I gotta remember real quick. Toughness 9 or less to people's hands. That's amazing, dude. That would be so fun, and it's very doable within this particular cube Like how Silumgar works there. Let's look at the Silumgar cards real quick before we move on. And they are the Demir. I have a foil of this Necromaster Dragon because I beat somebody to death with it in pre-release back in the day, and it was very, very cool. So, I love the look of the dragons. Oh my gosh, they look so cool, don't they? Ruthless Deathfang is really good for if you sack a creature, an opponent sacks a creature, or target opponent sacks a creature. You know what that works coincidentally quite well with? It might work kind of well with Mobilize, for instance, which I don't have. I don't think I have any black. Oh, I do have one black Mobilize card in here, because that sacks at EOT, end of turn, and this Venerated Stormsinger would trigger Ruthless Deathfang to make your opponent sack too. So you get good control value out of this stuff. And when you have a Ruthless Deathfang and you're starting to exploit stuff, you're getting a removal spell by sacking something. And you can sack the creature itself for exploit, by the way, if you didn't play back then and don't know that. You can do that, and that's a valid thing. Silumgar himself plays really well with this because you can take your opponent's best thing and keep it if you want. Or you can exploit their good card and get value out of it. It's so funny. I love Dragonlord Silumgar. And we also got another Taigam here. This is actually original timeline Taigam here. And he plays well with the graveyard synergies. He actually has an effect very, very similar to this particular Necropolis Fiend, where you can exile cards from your graveyard to kill things. And he also does that, where you can exile things from your graveyard. He actually has the same effect. And then he also lets you mill. And he also lets you skip your draw step, so you actually don't die to mill. So I like how there's a fit in a way for you to be able to use the self mill to help the delve, to help the renew, to help the exploit, and you don't actually necessarily die. Now, these are all the mechanics of the core 10 archetypes. However, they're not the only mechanics in the cube, because we also have Morph. Morph is actually my favorite mechanic in Magic. Maybe. Dash, I like Dash a lot. But Morph is one of my favorite mechanics. And I love when you have to wonder what your opponent's card is. Is that Manifest a land? Is it a Morph? Is he going to flip it up? I've stolen many, many cool cards with Karu's Spell Snatcher because it was morphed. And I am going to be happy to do that again. And I put a bunch of morphs across here. We got Megamorphs as well, which get a +1/+1 counter when they flip up. But I put a lot of morphs around in here to help build a deck for it, including the enablers, or the payoff cards like Whisperwood Elemental. That is also an enabler. I have a foil of this. And also Trail of Mystery. You can have a Trail of Mystery 5-color morph deck that is also further supported with the Secret Plans card, where you get to draw a card for flipping things up. So you've got a really good morph package. And then we also put manifest cards in here. So a part of those common area cards is like Fierce Invocation, where you can manifest the top card of your deck and put 2 +1/+1 counters on it, or Rage Form, which manifests the top card of your deck and gives it double strike, which means when you flip that creature up, if it's a creature that you flip up, you can now have like a big double strike creature. And so, yeah, I really like the way Morphs worked out within this cube, and I have had some really good test drafts. Let's look at those test drafts real quick. So I'm going to go to the playtest tab here, and I'm going to just look at my last draft I did. This is the last draft I did for this particular cube. I think it just has all my cards, so it's not really built or anything. But this is kind of what I drafted. And you can see the Abzan theming here, and we've got a lot of good, like just a very solid Abzan deck here. But I also did a couple others. I did this white-blue control draft to show that you could do 2-color quite well. In fact, this is mostly blue, actually, and it's got some Ojutai dragon cards in there. And then I also did this white-green Morph deck. This is not in that deck. That was just something I drafted. And it's just full of morphs, and it's got all the morph synergies that you could possibly want, and it's just a very solid green-white deck. And I like this because it means that when you sit down to play with your friends, you are going to be able to get any kind of deck that you want. Now, there's a couple things I do want to talk about why I cut certain cards that were iconic either back in original Cons block or, you know, now with Dragonstorm, and that why Elspeth, Stormslaver, and the Ugins aren't in the cube. In my experience, Elspeth, Stormslaver, and the 2 Ugins, both the Spirit Dragon and Eye of the Storms, they break the game. You just win on the spot when you play them. And none of the cards that I have in here are like that. Like, All Out Assault is not in this cube because it ends the game on the spot. Now, that's not to say there aren't non-Tarkir people in this cube. As you eagle-eyed viewer may have noticed, there's a Soren Solemn Visitor in here. This card does not end the game. He's hard to deal with sometimes, but he doesn't actually end the game on the spot because he's kind of easy to deal with. So he gets to stay in the cube, whereas Elspeth Stormslaver doesn't, even if I pulled a full art version of her out of one of my Commander sample packs, I think they're called. But yeah, that's why I left them out, because I don't want to create a game loop where you play a card and win the game instantly. And this has actually happened when I've drafted Tarkir, where I've played the Ugin and my opponent just gave up because they know they can't beat the Ugin. You know what I mean? Cast and win cards just create a bad limited experience, even in cube. And that's why, you know, even things like Dune Blast from original Cons aren't in here either. I don't want that. Okay? Now, you'll notice also that the colors here actually worked out really well. I mean, they're all 40 or 41. They're very, very close in color comp. And then we got 124 multicolored, because it is a multicolored cube. That's a third of the cube going to that. And you got a nice distribution of these. All these numbers kind of worked out very similar. You know, Mardu's got 15, Temur 16, Abzan 13, 14 for Jeskai, and 13 for Sultai. That works out pretty well, and then you've even got a 5-color build around with called the Spirit Dragons. In the kind of artifact space, you've got monuments for the colors. I went with monuments, the Con monuments, instead of the dragon monuments, just because the activated ability is actually very useful. Like this Mardu activated ability, making the 3/1/1s, very, very useful. And it is just the coolest of that style of mana fixing. Whereas the banners from original Cons, they drew a card, so you could like cash them in and draw a card, but they aren't super exciting. And then the ones from Dragons of Tarkir would turn into 4/4 dragons, which is cool, but not as exciting as being able to tutor up a land, to get a land to your hand, and, you know, filter that land out of your deck, and then also get something on theme from sacrificing your artifact. That's kind of cool. So, and they're also 2 mana, which also impacts it because they don't compete for play space with morphs. And then the other artifact suite, we've got Dragon Fireblade, Ghost Fireblade, Hero's Blade, Dragonstorm Globe, and Dragon Throne of Tarkir. Dragon Throne of Tarkir, really cool for setting up, for breaking open board states. And then these two are kind of like the reflexes of one another. Ghost Fire is good for equipping 2 morphs because it costs 2 less if it targets a colorless creature, and then gives that creature +2/+2. Dragonfire Blade costs less for each color of the creature it's targeting, and it'll give it +2/+2 hexproof from monocolored. Well, so these two play really, really well within the context of the cube, and then Hero's Blade works well because there are so many legendary creatures, and it will auto-attach to legendary creatures when you cast it, or when they ETB. So this is Khan's cube, guys. I'm going to leave a link to the full cube because I'm not going to go through every single card choice and why I chose this over that or whatever, but this is the cube, and it is fun. It is a lot of fun. It's more fun than a lot of things that you could possibly play on Magic Arena. And I am definitely looking to get deeper into cubes and making more cubes. In fact, for future cube plans that I have, I'm really working on a Theros cube right now, a Cosmic cube themed around Eldrazi and Phyrexians and energy, and then a crossover cube themed around Final Fantasy, Lord of the Rings, and Avatar: The Last Airbender, whenever that set drops. So if you want to hear me talk about more cubes that I've designed in the future and why I chose the cards I did, let me know in the comments below. Theros is going to take me a while to get around to because I'm starting to gear up for my Doom Dark Ages review, and then after that, all of June is going to be spent building up into Final Fantasy Magic the Gathering. So Theros Cube, I could probably put a video out around the time of Edge of Eternity's release. Let me know in the comments below if that's something you want to hear me talk about. And if you have a moment right now, maybe check out my Tarkir Dragonstorm review or my Fallout Commander product review that'll be dropping next week, you know, if you're watching this a little bit later. Yeah, you want to stick around and check it out. I don't cover only Magic because this is a video game channel, but I do plan to periodically go over to Magic from time to time because it's one of my favorite games of all time. And I will be reviewing the Final Fantasy Magic the Gathering set at the end of June, and I will also be reviewing Edge of Eternities probably, and Avatar: The Last Airbender later this year, in addition to Commander products for them. Guys, thank you for keeping it real with Rayl Deal Games and making it this far in the video. I hope you like Khan's Cube, and let me know what you think of it if you end up actually building it and trying it out for yourself. Thank you guys for watching my video, and I hope you all have a great day.